Welcome to the Cafe of Dreams. This is your host, Frank Thomas, with Lynn Kitchen. We have a great show for you here today. Lynn is on the line with me right now, and she's going to be talking about one of the 3 cafes that she has discovered through her own journey and walk through life. Well, Lynn, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Frank. It's a pleasure to be here. And yes, I think that it's an opportunity to talk about what the Cafe of Dreams is all about.
Absolutely, absolutely. But we're going to be starting kind of way back when you were going through your journey and discovering what life's really all about for you and how you found success, but you had to step through this journey. Is that correct?
That's right. There's a journey for all of us. And much of the journey is discovering who and what we are and the capacities and potentials that we have. Many of us are struggling with our own potentials, and how can we really live to our highest potential, even in the presence of difficult circumstances. So,
and I like the way you've classified the 3 of them in a nice way, using the idea of different types of diners. One is the victim kitchen, which we're going to be talking about today. The Ordinary Grill, and of course the Cafe of Dreams, where you ultimately want to be.
Right. That really is a journey that I went through myself in self-discovery of what kind of thinking patterns that I held, which created the results that I was living through. Mm-hmm. And I think that we all go through a process of discovery, and many of us don't like the circumstances that we find ourselves living in. And we come to realize that everything is a reflection of our thinking. So whatever it was that was happening, it was not happening to me. Mm-hmm. It was happening because of me, mm-hmm. and through me. So the victim diner, because my name is Lynn Kitchen, I came up with this concept of the 3 different levels of really thinking patterns. One level of thinking pattern is just like having an operating system in your computer that has a certain way of computing, and the end result is going to give you a certain pattern. And so our thinking pattern is the same way. It's nothing more than an operating system. So if you are, if your day is filled full of thoughts of anger, resentment, and blame, and fear, actually 4. If you really can recognize that those are the predominant thoughts that you are having on a daily basis, you're finding yourself in what I call the victim diner.
Now, let me ask you a question, Lynn. Do you find when you're talking to folks that it's kind of funny, when you're looking at somebody and talking to somebody, you can see things clearly because you're looking from the outside in. Do you find when you're looking from the outside in, you can clearly see when somebody's in the victim diner, but they don't see it?
Absolutely. And it takes a period of self-discovery to realize that you may be, without your knowledge, sitting in the victim diner, having, ordering from the menu of fear, blame, and resentment, and what it is that you're going to receive when you order from the menu of fear, blame, and resentment. You're going to receive circumstances in your life. The waiter is going to be bringing you a plate of food, so to speak, the nourishment of your life, the circumstance of your life that's filled full of blame and victimhood. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it is very difficult to recognize from within that unless you put in the practice of self-recognition, self-discovery, and the one key tool that I teach in all of my coaching programs is notice what you're noticing. Mm-hmm. That's the one key, and that's an inside noticing. That's your noticer, your third person within yourself who has to notice your thoughts. What are these thoughts thinking? And what's the tone of these thoughts? Is it a victim stance that I'm creating for myself?
Do you find that it helps to bring a person into a segment of their life, or do you like them to kind of look at things overall when you're turning on that third person to kind of watch and feel and to kind of oversee how you're reacting to situations?
Both. I believe that we can segment our lives and look at our thinking. We can segment it in the area of health, for example, or in the area of relationships. You can segment in the area of money. And maybe it is that you feel as if you are a victim of circumstances in your money life. Perhaps you feel like you're a victim of other people's actions unto you in your relationship life. Perhaps you feel like you're a victim of circumstances because you've received a difficult diagnosis in your health life. And taken all together, then you can add those up and say, wait a minute, I'm sitting in the victim diner because my thoughts are predominantly about blaming outside circumstances for what it is that I'm living.
You know, every time we have a show, Lynn, I become very personally convicted, and today is no exception. I'm listening to how you're describing this, and I remember about 2 years ago I went through a segment of my life, and you're right. And you know, I never realized that I was living in the victim diner until just this minute. I was able to pull myself out of it because I came to realize that enough's enough. But
you're not alone. You're not alone, and it doesn't matter what age or what stage we are in life. We are one thought away from the victim diner at all times. One thought away from the victim diner at all times. So it's not as if we, once we graduate from thinking like a victim, that we're cured forever.
Right.
We are always subject to moving back to feeling like a victim. You know what? I really think, I've been studying this for a long time, both myself and others. I believe that Americans are predisposed to feeling like we are victims. You know, we have a victim mentality, and I don't know, you are Canadian, you probably are exempt from this, Frank.
No, I'd have to say that we have a saying up in Canada, United States sneezes, we catch a cold, so I think we're right there with you.
But truly, the American mentality used to be one of discovery and gumption and determination and creating self-generative motion and movement. And many of our leaders do exemplify that kind of thinking today. Otherwise, there are people who really, truly exemplify that, and we're grateful for them, the technology leaders and so forth, and the wonderful improvements that we do have. But I'm only saying that I believe a larger percentage of our population have an operating system in their minds that think in a victim way, and they're blaming the government for doing something to us. They're blaming their parents for not giving us enough education or opportunity. They're blaming outside circumstances at all times. And what happens is that it retards our thinking. It retards our growth, and it actually creates leakage. I call it leakage.
Right.
Where you are leaking your God-given energy to think about blame and how other people are responsible, instead of using that energy to go out and create your dream.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's almost like the victim diner is a result of a situation and not really the situation. Why I say that is I have been doing a lot of study, and I've been wondering what's going on in North America as a whole, because if you step back 100, 150, 200 years ago, innovation was incredible, and people were thinking outside of themselves, and they were taking risks, and they were thinking about, how can I help my country as a whole? But the victim diner says, how can I help myself?
Right. How can I not only help myself, but get other people to give
Agree
me
with me,
aid.
yeah.
Agree with me and give me aid. And so we want to align ourselves and hang out with the people who are thinking progressive thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
not hang out with other people who have the same victim thinking, because they do hang together. And the the idea that my victim diner really purports here is notice what you're noticing. Find out when you are in that victim diner, because it's not, if you hang out in the victim diner long enough, I can tell you what's going to happen.
You know, and I find too, to kind of give you a little bit of insight, Lynn, I've been working on a new project which requires me to create some software. And it's been scary because as you're in the creation process, you're not really seeing any results. It's not like, Friday comes and a paycheck's in your hand and life is good and you can sit out at the beach on Saturday. When you're in that creative mode, it's scary because it's risky and but it's exciting at the same time. And I find the victim diner is right at my doorstep all the time, ready to say, oh, look at how you're wasting your time. Oh, this is not going to work. Oh, this is stupid.
Right.
You're crazy. What are you doing? And because the victim diner seems to be wanting to always suck me back into that place of comfort, but it's not a good comfort. It's almost like an icky comfort, a place where I can say, oh, I'm poor because, the government taxes me too much, or I'm not doing well, because, opportunities never come my way, and it's the economy, and it's the government, and I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, and it's quite common, and really, it's really not our fault either.
Mm.
It's not your fault, Frank, and it's not our fault. It's just that we get programmed through years and years of upbringing, and as I said, the news media, everything is lined up to really help us think in a certain way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That thinking in a certain way is an old pattern, and that's why I'm just labeling it. Hey, that's the victim diner.
Yep.
If you find yourself thinking that way, oh, I can't because, fill in the blank, I can't because I don't have, I don't know the right people.
Right.
I can't because I'm not smart enough. I can't because I don't have enough money. I can't because, is fill in the blank, whatever that is. Those are ways that we seduce ourselves to thinking that we don't have what it takes. And that's why it must come self-generatively. We have what it takes. We have the resources within ourselves at all times. And we have the resources to understand or recognize when we're the victims of our own past thinking,
Mm-hmm.
or that judgmental voice that is within us is a very interesting and difficult voice to change. And that's partly what I do as a coach, is help people to recognize when that self-judgment voice is predominantly in charge here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to also mention that, in the victim diner, I talk about how you can burn down your kitchen.
Mm.
Would you like to hear about that?
Absolutely.
I have found, and I have experienced this myself, that especially in a relationship, I'll give you a story about when I was married to a gentleman, and we were fighting all the time, and unfortunately, the choice I had made of a partner had a disease of alcoholism and drug addiction,
mm-hmm.
without my knowing it. So in the process of discovering it as we were married, we had a lot of problems, and I really kept thinking that I could solve everything by behaving a certain way, by doing certain actions, none of which worked. Everything got worse, and I began to become resentful.
Mm-hmm.
Resentful because I deserve better. I should have gotten, more love. So these resentments started to build up, but they went unexpressed.
Mm.
And happens is that when we begin to think like a victim, not and don't really take responsibility for our own side of the street, for our own actions, for our own choices. After all, I choose the man
Mm-hmm.
without really getting to know him.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is that we build up these silent resentments, and over time, one circumstance can make that silent resentment. I call it's like having a pot of resentment on slow boil in the back burner of your victim diner kitchen.
Right.
And one incident can cause that to boil over, your resentments explode, something happens, anger results, and you can burn down your kitchen, meaning you can burn down the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You can burn down, maybe perhaps it will end in divorce. It may end in a separation, whether it's family members. It may end up, in difficult situations that then you have to really say, well, what was the cause of that?
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't I recognize that my own resentments were building, and I never really took the time to see that it's partially my own thinking that got me in the situation.
Yeah.
So I have a 4-step process of helping people in my coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And when they do recognize that resentments are a large part of their thinking patterns, I have a 4-step process to help overcome resentments. And it's a most powerful tool that I use on a daily basis to help me stay out of the victim diner.
Good point. It's interesting because you mentioned that you were put into the situation, and yes, it was because of a poor decision or poor decisions, a lineup of poor decisions. But you got to a place where you started to partake and become part of that victim diner. And it's important to always, always reflect and look back and say, what am I bringing to this problem?
Right. What is my part in this? And make quick amends if whatever it is that your part in it. And that helps to bring back a healing, a way of living that keeps us clean. And it also creates space emotionally for us to generate newly.
Right.
When we find ourselves in a very difficult circumstance, it takes some work. It takes some activity to write your life. And it only takes a 1-degree shift to completely change all your circumstances in your life. A 1-degree shift in what? A 1-degree shift in your thinking.
Exactly. I think too, once you start making that, you start recognizing that you're entering into the victim diner way of thinking, and you start pulling yourself back out of that, and you start reevaluating it. I believe too, to help you make better decisions. Like, for example, when with this gentleman you were with, if you were able to pull yourself out of that and look at it from a more of an objective point of view instead of a subjective point of view, you could have said, this might not work, and you need to clean yourself up, and this is something I can't deal with. And maybe at the very least you might end up in the same situation where you're just not with that person anymore, but you could end that relationship without the baggage that comes with.
Absolutely, Frank. And I think that each person has to really recognize that you may be carrying around some baggage that need to be cleaned up, that brought into the marriage or that you brought into the relationship. Many of us have difficult pasts that we need to do some cleaning, because those pasts bring current thinking patterns. And most of that's really where we learn how to blame others first, rather than taking responsibility of our part of the thinking. And it takes a process, and when I discovered that I was part of the problem.
Mm.
It wasn't all about him.
Mm-hmm.
I was part of the problem. I was able to then start looking back and looking at how I was raised in an alcoholic home myself,
Mm-hmm.
how it tainted my thinking, how I became an easy victim thinker. And
Right.
so therefore, most circumstances I would interpret as being a victim were totally not the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Completely not, never is the truth for any of us.
Mm-hmm.
We are 100% at all times responsible for ourselves. We are never a victim. That's the interesting thing. And this can happen in money too,
Mm-hmm.
in the area of money. For example, I remember, as you know, I spent 35 years in the investment advisory business,
Mm-hmm.
dealing with many, many people about their money and watching their attitudes of victimhood, thinking that, oh, as soon as I buy a stock, that's when it goes down. Because I buy that stock, immediately it's going to go down. And every time that happens, therefore, I'm not a good investor. The whole world is set up against me. Or every time I sell a stock, that's when it goes up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that is a typical thinking pattern that is just not correct, because the stock market has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with whether you bought or sold, whatever your circumstances are. It's a non-emotional entity.
Mm-hmm.
But we, as humans, paint these meanings upon ourselves. And we even in money, during the 2008 most recent debacle, financial debacle, just look at the number of people who lined up on the victim stance saying,
Oh, yes.
we were hurt. The government did this. The banking industry did that to us. But it is up to each and every one of us to self-generate, to move forward, no matter what the circumstances are.
Yeah, and you can see how the government has tried to step in to avoid mitigation. I know in Canada, if you invest anything over $20,000, you actually have to sign a legal document stating that you have a net worth of a certain amount and you can handle this and that, because they know if things go south, there's going to be blame.
That's right. So we blame is that's an interesting phenomenon, and it's still a pattern. It's our thinking pattern, both as a culture,
Mm-hmm.
but really we are not living a cultured life. We are living an individual life, and so we have the power to choose a blame thought or a generative thought.
Right.
At any one moment. So the Cafe of Dreams is here to really help people recognize when they find themselves in the victim diner and say, whoops, wait a minute, I have the power within myself to shift my focus. It doesn't mean that you have to go back in time and go through, 10 years of therapy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It just means the moment by moment recognition of, oh, that's a blame thought. That's a victim thought. I'm blaming somebody else for something. No, I have the power to make a decision to be self-generative.
Right.
And that's what I'm purporting, that as a self-generative society, we are so smart. Each of us individually have an unlimited potential of discovery within ourselves, our intellect, our talents, what we can do and be, have and give in the world, and our dreams. The dreams can be that which can pull us forward
Mm-hmm.
to create our own self-generative new circumstances, to look at the world newly. And we can't do that if we're constantly leaking our intelligent energy through the back door
Mm-hmm.
by way of blaming others. You won't move forward that way.
Yeah, you can only look forward or backward. You can't do both.
That's right.
Lynn, that was awesome. And I will honestly have to say to you that if there is nobody else who's been convicted today, I have.
I don't really want you to feel convicted, and if you do, you say up till today.
Yeah, but that's good
Up
though.
till
It's good. Conviction is not really the right word. It is conviction, but it's also clarity. It's also, okay, I'm realizing that I'm getting some, I like to call it stinking thinking happening, and it's
Yeah.
time to realize that and say, okay, that's great. I hear you, but I'm going to do this anyhow.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was a wonderful quote that I started my 20s learning
Mm-hmm.
when I first became a salesman door to door.
Mm-hmm.
Was my first job. Uh, I sold Webster's dictionaries door to door as as my first job, and this was the quote that I said to myself every morning, every hour, and every night. And that was the one. It was a quote by Calvin Coolidge that says, "Nothing takes the place of persistence." Have you heard that one?
Mm-mm.
Nothing takes the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing, even talent will not. I probably don't have this quote exactly, but there's nothing more common than unsuccessful people with a lot of talent.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes on to say that genius will not, because unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. I mean, it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then the quote goes on to say that even education will not. Those of us who blame, oh, I don't have enough education. Education won't be, your golden goose, because he said the world is full of educated derelicts.
Mm.
And then he ends the quote by saying, persistence and determination alone is omnipotent. So what does omnipotent mean? The word omnipotent means that that's a trump card. It's a higher vibration.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can leave our excuses at the door, our blames, our victim thinking, our fears, our anxieties, and figure out a way to shift that to persistence and determination, even when you don't know, like you said in your analogy of inventing something new, Frank. Even when you don't know when that inspiration is going to come from, or you don't know where the resources are going to come from, persistence and determination alone are omnipotent.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
just realizing that we are the unlimited spiritual beings with resources that we know not of.
Mm-hmm.
And it's time for us to shift from the victim diner and point ourselves toward what I call the cafe of dreams, where we can really self-generate
Mm-hmm.
and live from our dreams.
Oh, good way to put closure on that, I tell you. And I totally agree with you. The whole idea of persistence, I never thought of that. One thing that was ringing in my mind, just to add, like the stamp of you're absolutely 100% right on that, is the fact that I have watched other people in my field and doing what I do, and I've seen them just take off and take flight and just do incredible things. And I've seen their work, and it's not that good, but it's all about they persisted. It just kept going and kept going and kept going. And when I decided that in my wisdom that I was wasting my time, they were foolish enough to say, I'm just going to keep going. And at the end of the day, they met their goal where I never did.
Interesting.
So,
yes. The thing that I want to mention is that there's so many opportunities that go by because we feel like we're not good enough,
mm-hmm.
Or that we don't have all those resources lined up, or that there's something standing in our way and we never really can get through it. And you've just vocalized a very common thing that happens to us, and that procrastination is extremely common, and it's part and parcel to this operating thinking. It's it's partly, again, it's the voice of judgment, which is one that we've learned. I'm not good enough, or I can't do this, or might as well stop. But just by the persistence of plowing through, even if it's not exactly what you wanted it to be, it will open new doors. Ching, 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 ching.
You're absolutely correct.
Things will open up as we move forward in the direction of our dream. Notice that is a wonderful quote by Thoreau. As you take one step in the direction of your dream, unlimited opportunities come your way.
You're absolutely correct.
Angels, in the form of people or resources, begin to come to you, and you attract a whole new caliber of opportunity to you. But it doesn't happen unless you
start taking those steps. Yeah, absolutely.
Start taking those steps, yeah.
And I've discovered that even with my journey of creating this software, that's exactly what happened. To kind of give you some insight, I started this journey thinking that it was a good idea, but I was not really enthusiastic about it, to be perfectly honest with you. And I could see better things to do, but I had somebody talk me into just giving it a shot. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot and see. And I was actually doing it on the pretense, and I'm going to say it, but on the pretense of showing him that it's a waste of time, to be perfectly honest with you. And when I started to go to solve the problem, a couple things occurred. First of all, it became very interesting because it was a nasty problem. I won't lie. It was tough to solve, but it became challenging and interesting. And when I eventually solved the problem and figured out a way to make it work and demonstrated it, people were like, "Oh, this is the only," and it's unusual. It's one of what I've done is, and it's not to pat me on the back, but just through going through that challenge and figuring it out and seeing how other people are doing it, the software I'm creating is unique because nobody else, like there's other products that kind of work, but the one I've created, everybody who's beta testing right now says it just works.
So let me ask you a question, Frank. At the moment that you made that shift from thinking that it was an unsolvable problem, or as you said, a really hairy problem, to actually working it through and it becoming an most unique evolution of a new iteration of perhaps a new product. What was that turning point? What did you apply in your thinking at that moment that made the shift? I'll tell you what I recognize in you, if you'd like.
Absolutely, because I'm trying to see where that point was, and I'm not seeing it, but I do know it happened.
Okay, I'm fascinated with that point because that's an inflection point.
Mm-hmm.
That inflection point happens whether you're in the stock market, something going from down to finally moving back up, or it can also happen in our thinking when you are subjected to a negative thought and you turn it around and it starts to move back in the other positive direction. What is that right there in that inflection point? What I noticed about you in that moment, the way you expressed it, is you became curious.
Mm-hmm.
You became more curious than you were calling it unsolvable. Your brain went from calling it unsolvable to, oh, I'm really curious about why this is not working. And then that curiosity, the brain is an amazing shifter of circumstances in and of itself. Because of your curiosity, you applied your own intelligence. That your curiosity is part of your higher intelligence system.
Mm-hmm. I noticed there's many times when I was really riddled with a problem, I would be thinking on it, and I found the most effective thing to do was to go to bed and go to sleep. And as I was thinking about that problem, I wake up either in the middle of the night or in the morning, and I might not have had the solution, but sometimes I did. But I would have a path to the solution. which was very interesting. And I was like, where did that come from? That's I like that's a good idea, like, and I'm looking for the person who gave it to me, because it wasn't me. It was there, and it was just incredible. And and that was, to me, very insightful, because, and it's fun once you get into the creation mode. It's hard to step away from that. You want to keep creating and keep building and making things.
I like that, Frank. And so I'd like to just invite everybody who may be listening, if you find yourself in circumstances that you don't like, if you find yourself with your own thinking that you feel stuck, or that you feel like circumstances are against you, or if you find yourself with your predominant thoughts on a daily basis being blame,
Mm-hmm.
resentment, or fear, or let's see, blame, resentment, fear. There's a fourth one. But if those are your predominant thoughts, then you're in the victim diner. It's time to get curious.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to get curious. Maybe there's something that I can change here that will shift this whole thing, and I can make it different. And that's what the Cafe of Dreams is all about. That's what I do. I help people to recognize those points of conversion and then shift it, because we can do that.
Excellent. And I do know that, Linda, you've just begun a new mentorship program. Tell us about it. I believe you call it Building Your Money Dreams. Is that correct?
Yes, and this is focusing the attention really on the money part of our lives, health, wealth, love, and purpose being the 4 areas that I like to cover. But this course is all about the money, mm-hmm. and your income and the level of your financial affairs. And I bring to bear the 35 years of my former career as an investment executive in the investment world. And I'm going to now really teach some of the strengths that I know about to help people really begin to build their money dreams. So the course is called Smart Money Mastery. It's a series of courses, actually. And the first course is going to be Building Your Money Dreams, the 7 steps to shift your money reality starting today. Mm-hmm. Because many of us are in a reality that we don't like the amount of money that we are earning, the amount of money that we have, the amount of money that we can give. And many of us have plenty, but we want to shift that as well. Many people who have money still have issues about how to create wealth, how to shift wealth, how to become a philanthropist. And many of us are moving from one level of expertise, let's say earning $100,000, and wanting to double that to $200,000, and really move up the ladder of choices, move up the ladder of livelihood, and really create your dreams. I'll be also teaching about how to finance your dreams as a part of this course. So it'll be a lot of fun. It's called Smart Money Mastery.
Excellent. And I believe that what they can do to get more information is to come over to your site, thecafeofdreams.com, and sign up. There's a sign up, I know, right on the front page of the website. Sign up, and I know you'll be providing information to those people who do.
That's correct. That way you get to become a patron of the Cafe of Dreams, and that means that you're on my email list, and I will then give you a special invitation to this course, and you can consider it if it sounds like it's something of interest. It's going to be starting a little bit later this fall, and it'll be something that'll help people by the end of the year truly create a difference, so that we can all begin 2016 with an entire different money mind.
Very timely, too, with a lot of the uncertainty in the markets and a lot of the negativity. I think this is something that's going to be a real boon to a lot of folks, because of the fact that it allowed them to look at things from a different point of view. And I know, Lynn, you being that you were in the financial markets for a period of time, you've seen the booms and the busts, and you've seen how to operate in both.
That's right.
Absolutely. And Lynn, thank you so much. Any
Thank
closing
you.
comments regarding the victim diner for us?
Well, again, I just say that the victim diner is an evolution. We all find ourselves there at one point or another. And we are just one thought away from being in the victim diner. And it just takes a little bit of internal recognition, and we can change that with just a shift of our thinking. So come to the Cafe of Dreams and I'll help you do that.
Excellent. Lynn, thank you so much. Once again, make sure you step over to the cafeofdreams.com, sign up to Lynn's list, and you'll definitely get more information on this up and coming course. Lynn, thank you so much.
Thank you, Frank.